what happened was, Suroosh did Heavy Metal in Baghdad, which, at the time, online content was synonymous with shit, and then there was TV, which was less shit, and then there was like, the holy grail of film. And, he did the first thing, and it was online, and our editor said, hey, you can make a feature out of this. We said, okay, and it cost us 25 grand. So, and then it went on to Toronto Film Festival, which won Critics' Choice, and won Berlin Film Festival for the doc, Panorama, and then it went on to 84 different film festivals. It got picked up by the BBC, got picked up by everybody. And we're like, oh, that's what we'll do then. We'll just make online content that doesn't suck. International conventions, Magic, ASR, things like that. As well as when we were with Richard, we were looking at sort of, buying up other companies around the world and sort of making it a global enterprise. And so when they went bust, we moved to Brooklyn, and what's interesting then is we actually got there right as Williamsburg exploded. Right as all these sort of artists and the musicians and the filmmakers and the designers sort of came out of Williamsburg, we were there. And Brooklyn almost became a brand and sort of, became hot in Germany and in England and in Japan, and then we were sort of the voice of that brand.
So you're basically following the cultural developments that are going on, like you're saying, in terms of you're writing this magazine for the community, you're in New York, the community is there in Brooklyn before it gets gentrified, you're there in the midst of the community that you're publishing for.
Exactly.
And then, so how does
people think that we moved to Williamsburg because we thought it was cool? The reality is that we didn't have a choice. We couldn't afford to stay.
Rent was cheap.
Yeah. At that time, Williamsburg was a wasteland as well. It was amazing. It was like just zero accountability. It was very decadent at that kind of post 9/11 era economic collapse, and we were there as part of this kind of zeitgeist. And like Shane saying, our friends were in these bands that all started blowing up, the Yeah-Yeah-Yeahs and the Rapture and all, it was a great kind of moment in culture and time in New York City.
Yeah.
To be part of that.
It was, we used to get shaken down by crackheads, bro. Crazy Larry would defecate on our stoop unless we paid him $1 a day.
And all you have to do is go bankrupt to get there.
That's it.
So, and then how does it go international? Because you're in, 18 different countries now? 34 different countries. So how does it go international? You move to Brooklyn and then it goes international from there?
Well, we went to Japan and England first, but then
Australia.
What happened was we realized when we were getting bigger in the States that we could go after Rolling Stone or Spin and sort of water everything down. Or we could go after the sort of 150, what were then called hipsters, now fire starters, early adopters, whatever you want to call them, 150,000 in the UK, 100,000 in Germany. And so we said, well, we'll rather just go after the people that like us, the sort of post-MTV generation, and we'll go after them rather than try to do 1 million copies here. And so now we're at 1.5 million copies globally, but it's sort of, the cool kids.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And how does that, in terms of the international partnerships, how does that work? Do you start buying different companies, or people are approaching you, or?
We had no money, so we could buy anything.
Yeah.
We would go and we would do, again, a system where we would go to other local publishers or people who we thought would be good publishers, and we'd say, okay, we'll give you a certain percentage of ownership, and then we'll hire the editorial team, you'll give us an office, you'll pay for the first 10 print runs. And then as time went by, we'd either buy them out or, they'd sort of invest more. And then when we got more and more money, and when we became really profitable, we just started buying out the actual individual publishing entities, but we kept the editorial.
A lot of it was them finding us. People would approach us and say, I'm in Australia, I'm a big fan of what you're doing. There's room in the marketplace for Vice. And so we weren't that sophisticated necessarily about who we were choosing with. We were just like, oh, these people really get what we're doing, and it was exciting to us to launch in Japan. So we would set up and go, but that was obviously the internet, hard work at that time, and getting it out there. And so and instead of trying to go big in America and break through and become this kind of successful mainstream thing, where we would always say we'd have to put the chili peppers on the cover, something we would never do. We're getting to our audience and doing this lateral expansion, and it just kind of grew from there. And next thing you know, it's a global thing. And what's also interesting is that that free model of publishing for the magazine was something that was very formal in countries like Germany or the UK, where if it's free, it must be shit. That was the idea. So
and free, when you say free, you mean free to
free
consumer.
distribution.
Yeah.
Like it's not on the newsstand. And we were always saying, well, it's actually, we have a 100% pickup rate, the model, it works. And what ended up happening was that Vice became the biggest lifestyle magazine in the UK, and all of those other, The Face and Dazed and Confused and ID, which we recently acquired, we became bigger. So it was interesting. It was kind of free model.
And using that same distribution model
Yeah.
in the different countries, you'd have your publishing partners and you'd say, hey guys, look, work with the advertisers to get it through, like we did.
Well, the advertisers would call the stores and say, hey, because they had ads in the mag, they'd say, hey, push the mag because, or take the mag because we want to support our brands in the store. And then the stores would have kids coming in saying, hey, when's the new Vice, when's the new Vice? So they realized it brought a lot of traffic, so then everyone started fighting for the mag. And when we would put it down initially, it would be 2 weeks, it would go in, and then it would be 2 days, and then it would be 2 hours. So like the minute we put it down, it would be gone.
There's a lot that makes it that way as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of people, but what happened was, Suroosh did Heavy Metal in Baghdad, which, at the time, online content was synonymous with shit, and then there was TV, which was less shit, and then there was like, the holy grail of film. And, he did the first thing, and it was online, and our editor said, hey, you can make a feature out of this. And we said, okay, and it cost us 25 grand. So, and then it went on to Toronto Film Festival, which it won British Choice. It won Berlin Film Festival for the doc, Panorama, and then it went on to 84 different film festivals. It got picked up by the BBC, got picked up by everybody. And we're like, that's what we'll do then. We'll just make online content that doesn't suck. And, Spike helped us out a lot. And, that's
in terms of guerrilla style filming or
storytelling.
Yeah.
He's a great storyteller. And he helped. We're opening a big campus in LA where Spike and a couple of our other senior editors actually teach, because we do a lot of things where we get shooters and cutters right out of tech school. We go to the deans and say, give us your top student. They like it because they get their kids jobs. We like it because we get their best talent. And then Spike or Bernardo or any of our top guys, Bernardo who cut Heavy Metal in Baghdad, will then run them through a school of how we shoot, how we cut, because we do that. We do everything in a completely different way.
Cool. And
Which is why you see what Netflix is doing and putting House of Cards up or whatever it is. It's got to be good quality. That's what has been our primary focus. It's just very good.
And in terms of, what are you guys? Are you guys a news network?
We're an entertainment network. Everyone always asks us what is Vice. And, look, we do magazines, we do books, we do music, we do online, we do TV, we do film. We're just a media company like any other media company. We do all that stuff. We're in 34 countries. We're just younger and weirder. So people are like, you guys are, what is it? Well, it's a media company. We just make media. And our primary focus is online and mobile. But, we do TV in 24 different countries. We have an HBO series in the States and here in Canada. And, we do a lot of film work now. We have 4 films in distribution right now. So, we're a media.
But it is reporting from crazy places.
Sure. Well, we do a lot of news stuff. News is, our audience has sort of forced us into news because we always say, look, Vice is a news source. You're fucked because as we've said here, we came from being in Montreal sort of style mag. But as we grew around the world, we started seeing more environmental problems, political problems. Obviously, young people. Europe's on fire. If the Gulf War made CNN, the current economic crisis made Vice. And so we became the sort of voice of this rage. And no one was really reporting on it. No one was embedding with the anarchists in Greece. They were embedding with, the Marines and wherever. So, that's when our growth became exponential. And, we
in terms of, and when you say growth, you mean in views online? Is that how you measure that growth?
Well, there's a lot of,
Everything, though.
Yeah,
growth, the amount of content we're producing, number of offices, number of employees, just growth overall.
Scale.
Doubling the production output, or tripling, or whatever it is, over the last 3 years, we've probably increased our volume of content output 5 to 10, the multiple of 5 to 10 times, I think.
And obviously scale, our YouTube channels were very successful for us. That was a massive amount of scale. With our Advice network, we were now, sort of getting 220 million uniques a month, which is, staggering numbers. And, online, mobile, we're doing a lot in India, television. So if you sort of started cuming it all together, this little tiny magazine from Montreal, that used to be, 20,000 copies, is now doing hundreds of millions. And so that really started, I guess, 2 or 3 years ago. And then the sort of revenue, came along with it. And now, because news was our big success, like when we were on YouTube, our time on site was 24 to 28 minutes, depending on the month, which they've never seen numbers like that. They're generally sub 2 minutes if they're lucky. We were one of the fastest sub drivers in the history of YouTube, best video completion rate, best like versus dislike ratio, all these things. And it just scaled up so quickly. And we realized it was all the news content. It was all the news stuff that they were consuming as longer format. And so then came the HBO show, which was more of a news magazine.
So you use those stats on YouTube to be able to talk with HBO and say, look...
No, we just were making more and more content. We said, oh, this is, people are really loving this stuff, let's make more. We like making it. And then we showed HBO. Actually, the real story is there was a big US network who wanted to give us a news magazine show. And we said no. Well, we said yes, actually. And then Ari Emanuel, our agent, said, look, you can't, I know you guys, you can't do anything on a major network. Not that HBO is a major network, but not a cable. And HBO will let you do what you want to do. They'll give you total creative control. They'll let you swear, which is good because I swear, like I said, I'm sure you. And so they said, so we went to HBO, and it's interesting because HBO is sort of the gold standard of television, and wins more awards than any other network combined, all the other networks combined. And then for us to sort of go on HBO and do well was a sort of validation that, okay, like when we started, when we said we're going to make great stuff online, it's the same stuff that we make online. So you could be on TV and have that. It was a validation for us, and so much so that now we're launching a 24-hour news channel in conjunction with YouTube and Google in 18 countries and 18 languages simultaneously in the fall, and that's been our biggest focus.
So we have an HBO clip, right? Did you want to?
Well, I was just going to say, the reel that we showed kind of touches on it, but to your question, the .com side of Vice is a network. We have Vice.com, but then there's Noisy for Music, Creators Project for Arts, Motherboard for Tech, Fightland with MMA. We have a new EDM vertical called Pump, and then News will be what we're launching soon, which Shane's talking about with YouTube and Google. And that's the news channel that has helped define the brand and driven a lot of our growth.
So you guys, they say you're the next MTV. Is that correct? Would you say that that's something that's correct? You've got multiple verticals in there. Because I've heard, you guys are either the next CNN or the next MTV.
I think Noisy is the next MTV.
Yeah, Noisy.
Our music play.
Yeah.
I think Vice overall is, I think our news vertical, you could say, would be the next CNN. And I think so there's aspirations to be both. And I think people are ready to get their news from different people in a different way, and the HBO show is testament to that.
I've gone on record and say I want to be the next MTV, I want to be the next CNN and the next ESPN, and I was like, oh, that's a shame. But if you look at, you can go on Alexa today, and we're bigger than MTV Online. Now they have a TV channel as well, but if you look at the numbers that Noisy's doing, or if you look at, the numbers that news is going to do as a default of news on YouTube, is you sit there and say, okay, when you're doing, 500 million, video views, then you're not CNN, you're 3 times CNN. And so what CNN did and what MTV did, and Tom Freston, who I did my original deal with for VBS, is now on our board, who was the CEO of Viacom. He did the MTV. He built MTV. when I say we want to be the next MTV, it was the sort of democratization of television brought about by cable allowed MTV to happen. And through online and the democratization of, and sort of taking away those, prohibitive barriers of cost, we want to be the MTV, i.e. the sort of the upstart, the challenger, of our generation online, if we already aren't. But now we want to go and take on CNN for news, because every generation has a changing of the guard, and CNN is dying. And we had a great partnership with CNN for years, and but look, they're dying, their ratings are hurting, they're shrinking, and so and we're growing exponentially. So we're going to try to go after that. Yeah. And on the ESPN side, a lot of what drives our traffic is sports. That just isn't not the big three. We follow sports, and as our Gen Y grows, our sports get bigger than the traditional.
Yeah. So if you're going to grow to that size, how do you scale? But still remain true to what your audience wants?
That's a great question. We always had, so we came up on the magazine model, which is you have a publisher, money, editor, editorial, and then we had a bunch of stringers that you would get to say, okay, you write or you take photos, whatever. So our model now is, okay, we have 4,000 contributors around the world, we have 1,800 employees and 34 offices. But when we want to grow, we just say, okay, we've been working with these 4,000 contributors. If we need more shooters, we know exactly who the best ones are because we've been working with them over the past 5 to 6 years. If we want new cutters, we can get them. If we want, writers, because we actually are working with the majority of them now. They'll work for us and make the lawyers. But when we want to, we'll just say, okay, we'll bring you on full time. And because the brand is growing so quickly, and because people see that, then they'll leave their freelance and come to work for us.
So that's more on the operational side. I'm thinking more on that audience side. You guys appeal to a particular type of millennial, and maybe not all millennials. And how do you grow if you want to? CNN is going to appeal to what's their audience? 25 to 65 or something like that.
Well, they
35 to 40 to 65.
No, CNN. If you look at Pew Research, CNN skews at about 61, 62. The big three skew at about 63, and Fox skews at 66.
Yeah.
So they're done.
You just wait for them to die off.
Yeah. No, seriously. I mean, if you look at
it's riding the wave of the millennium, because you've got the boomers at such a huge audience share that most of the media is focused on right now,
or have been forever.
Or have been forever. And then you've got the millennials, which is actually by population size bigger.
Yes.
Might not have the spending power, more niche at this time.
Well, they don't have the spending power in dollars per household, but they have the spending power when they actually buy shit. And so what's happened now is this demographic, which is the demographic now, everybody needs to talk to, and they can't. Because CNN, for example, although they're trying now, can't retrofit. You can't go to everybody and say, okay, like Mr. said, stop having these big, cameras and start shooting them cyber shots. You can't go to these guys and say, let's retrofit this and have younger hosts, and that will do the trick. It just doesn't work. And so I think that, now, and look, it happens in every generation, there's a changing of the guard. And so I don't know where you're getting sworn.
No, I got 15.
But and look, it's happening, and the hardest to talk to demographic, everybody's sort of waking up and saying, how do we do this? And there's not a lot of companies out there that can.
But you can't swear on network TV, or will you be able to swear on network TV?
We swear like.
But you're on specialty.
We're on cable.
You're on cable, right? Cable and internet, which.
Well, we can swear online.
Yeah. No. I mean, but if you go mass, right? If you go big, if you create this, if the vision plans out the way that it's unfolding, the future of network television or the future of network internet or however your audience is getting. Right? It's going to.
But it's all going to be the same thing, and B, we don't care about network TV because we've been offered networks before because we produce, 2,500 hours of content a year. So if you have a network and it's dying, you come and say, oh, Vice can do it because they have an audience and they have the content, they have the brand, they have the activation, they can do it all. And we said no because we're primarily an online company, and we believe as goes India, so shall go the world, which sounds funny, but what it means is it's the youngest population in the world. They're all now consuming with 4G, sort of pirated $20 smartphones from China. What does that mean? It means that what happened with the PC is that it became commodified. And the only reason why you buy one PC from another is because of what it has in it, what special services, what bespoke services it has. It's already happened in India where you don't care what phone service it is. It's just what can you give me that I can't get anywhere else. And they have Bollywood and they have cricket. They don't have anything else. So we said, okay, we'll provide everything else. So young people are going to be consuming lots and lots and lots and lots of content mobile. And so we sit there and say, okay, great. We did our experiment in India. That's where we're going to go. We're going to go forward. We're not going to go back and say, I got to get a TV network because then I can, win Emmys and get the accolades or whatever. I don't care about that shit. If I do it and it's gravy, and I license and I get lots of money from it, and it's a big ad for my brand, fantastic.
Which is the HBO show.
Yeah.
Reality. But like online, our numbers are bigger than if we had a cable channel. So why are we trying to
They're all getting mad now because they're all TV people.
We're going to be on stage with
Isn't that why you-
CBS later this evening. So,
But CBS is interesting. I mean, they're all interesting. I was at this dinner in wherever, and it was all these CEOs of big companies. And I was sitting next to the CEO of a major network. It wasn't CBS. And they said, oh, we're margin negative. I said, I don't know, what do you mean margin negative? They're like, well, we don't make money. And you're like, how can a network that isn't CBS make no money? They're like, well, none of us make any. I mean, we make money on other things, Univision, this, that, whatever else it is. But we don't make money.
but how do you guys make money? You guys make money primarily through ad impressions online? Is that the...
Well, we make money, not so much anymore. We make money a bunch of different ways. And like Suroosh said, we came up and we had to make money on everything we did. We're incredibly conservative because of that. We had to let nothing, we didn't deficit finance anything ever.
Mm-hmm.
So what we learned, and you touched on it a little bit, is we sort of do vertical and horizontal and vertical, which is in the value chain. We'll do the strategy for the brand. We'll create the assets for the brand. Then we'll make the content, then we'll activate around it. So we get paid about 5 times before we put it on.
Working with the advertisers, not just necessarily selling ad placement inventory.
Well, we'll tell them ads don't work. If you just want to take ads, it's not
traditional advertising is there, but we have multiple show sponsors, old school style show sponsorships are great. Brought to you by Norelco before you watch the
So it's like it's content marketing.
Exactly.
It's one of the terms of
And so we get paid 5 times before it goes online, and then because we're in 34 countries, we can license to TV, mobile, online. And now it's a great time to be a content creator because there's bidding wars. As goes India, so shall go the world. India, they have auctions for our stuff that actually, here we do auctions to go lower and lower on ad sales on things like Google and YouTube. They're going higher and higher because they have to get your content.
When you say it's the brands that are auctioning it, or
the carriers,
the
mobile carriers, but online, it's the same thing online. It's the same thing.
So you're licensed.
If you have a product that everybody wants, then they'll say, okay, well, I want exclusivity for that, so I'll outbid Vodafone and I'll give you, $5 million. But meanwhile, you're retaining all the IP. You just say, okay, here's your window, and then you go.
Gotcha.
But you made $5 million in India, then you can sell it for $5 million on YouTube. You can sell it for $5 million to TV and all.
So it's kind of a combination between brand-funded content in multiple different ways, and then you have licensing revenue that comes on top of that as it goes out globally.
Yeah.
And in terms of the brand-funded stuff, what are the margins around it? Because you think from a business mechanics perspective, it's way easier just to sell a 30-second spot, right?
No, it's much more profitable than not. And one of the things that
Why is that? Because each one's custom, or is it because your shooters are cheaper? Or?
Suroosh touched on it, which is we were going back to the 1950s of Only the Shadow Knows brought to you by Calgon.
Or soap operas.
Yeah, you're going to make Only the Shadow Knows anyway. It's just Calgon or Marlboro, whoever at the time would go in and sponsor. So we're going to make these shows anyway. It's just different brands can sort of have perfect fit. But where it really works and where we're really making our cash now is, Intel came to us and said, we want to get close to an arts and creative community. and we actually wanted to create the largest sort of online arts community. And so we started the Creators Project, and they started it as a, they were going to open it up to their OEMs, to all the sort of, HPs and the Dells. And
so all the physical hardware devices.
Exactly.
To be able to access it through these physical hardware
Exactly.
devices to connect with consumers, young consumers all around the world.
And so they do more market research than any other company in the world. They have 8 algorithmic spiders going anytime on the web. And the only campaign they've ever done in their history that satisfied all 8 globally was the Creators Project. And so because of that, they said, we're not going to do it with OEMs, we'll fund the whole project. They get the lift, they get all the lift. There's no advertising, nothing else. And people are very sophisticated. So if they say, I like for Spike Jones, I got a film by Spike Jones, and all you see is Intel RobNet production credit, they say, that's great, I get it. I understand that, you made my life better, Intel's cool. And they had such a high, they had a lift that went from 3% positive to 38% positive in the first year, in the quant study. So it was so successful that and it's a lot of money that they give us every year. And
so they're re-upping on an annual basis to create
doubling
content,
and doubling.
to create content for this portal, to create,
Exactly.
and it's also live event activations as well.
Exactly.
So it's not just on the screen; it's in physical.
Yeah, our last event
locations.
in Beijing had 250,000 people come to it. So I mean,
That's a big ticket item. That's like on the advertising spectrum. That's what is awesome as a guest.
Because you've got the physical activations, you've got the building the
Content.
portal, the
Yeah.
content,
It's
and then
very cool.
it's renewing that every year to produce more of it.
And
But you guys
because of that now, Samsung, HTC, IBM, all the biggest
they're knocking
companies
on the door.
have said we want that exact same thing. So we have 7 verticals launching.
That is why it's more profitable than a 30-second spot.
Because of the scale of it. And you guys are handling the activations in terms of producing these events, and that's all done through inside your organization. Is it called Unity? Virtue. So that's an ad, like a creative shop inside of your media company that handles all of that. So rather than working with creative agencies, you've built that. I'm sure you've worked with some creative agencies, but you've built that in-house.
We do everything in-house.
Cool. So we have, I think, 10 minutes left, so I just want to make sure if the audience has questions. Oh yeah, there we go. We've got microphones here, so let's see what the audience has got to say.
So your origin story is awesome. I mean, you want us to all believe you're 2 idiots living in Montreal, and you're sort of happy.
What idiot?
Okay.
No, not him, me. I'm an idiot.
But the amazing thing about Vice, I'm slightly older probably than your demographic, but I would run down local Lewis in Toronto and pick it up as soon as I could. But one thing that changed was when you started to go around the world and see all this shit. Sort of tapping into the rage that's going on in Europe. And this whole thing sort of fails or succeeds on your ability to develop an editorial voice as it relates to that stuff. And you guys have done this amazing job of being kind of in the middle, right? Like topless feminists versus neo-Nazis, right? I think you revisited that today, but it's not a rosy portrait of this movement. I mean, you show it warts and all. So at what point did you make this decision about how you were going to approach that editorial voice as it related to hard-hitting journalism? I mean, I see it in your show all the time. I mean, the way you curate your stories clearly suggests a bias, but when you're telling your stories, there's not a huge bias in what you're talking about. So it's really an amazing picture of what's going on, which is probably why millennials disconnect from news to begin with, because you got CNN in the middle, you got Fox way on the right, and you got MSNBC way on the left, and they're telling you what to think.
Well,
you don't.
You just hit the nail on the head. And the first thing that we are very passionate about is to be non-political, which sounds easy, but now if you look at it, everyone always talks about the liberal media. There's no, I mean, not in America and not a lot of Western Europe, because they're all multi-billion-dollar corporations that are afraid of losing Budweiser as their sponsorship. So they become, I mean, it's not even news anymore. It's just, talk radio, it's op-ed crap, and no one was doing stories. They were closing their bureaus to do actual news and just having O'Reilly spout off because O'Reilly, one of them, just spout off because it's cheaper and it gets the ratings. So we saw that as an opportunity, A. And B, I think our news stuff came out of a show I wanted to do called Where All the Atoms, because we were in Beijing and I was shooting a a 2-week traffic jam that went all the way to Mongolia. And literally, and it wasn't like a 2-hour traffic jam or a 2 day, it was a 2-week traffic jam. And we were doing the micro economies that like you had porta potties and then they had, you know, kebabs or whatever, and then you're like a little bit close to each other. The porta potties and kebabs. And, but I remember sitting there going, you know, there's a 2-week traffic jam, yet car companies have to make 3% to 4% more cars a year just to break even. Where are all the adults? Like, do we not see that it's already broken? There's a 2-week traffic jam, we still have to make more cars. And so then we sort of dawned on us that our editorial voice, much like The Economist is sort of like the guy in the bar who knows everything telling you the story. Our voice is sort of the absurdity of the modern world. Like, this is just crazy. What's happening now with you know, the NSA, and it's crazy what's happening. And you go to countries. You know, we were just talking earlier about China, the real estate bubble in China, the one-child policy in China. You can go to any country, including Canada, and say, this is just crazy. And so I think that, you know, now Gen Y is going to give it the bill of the baby boomer spending, and they're sitting there going, okay, now we have to fix this shit. And no one's going out there and just saying, here it is, it's fucked, we have to fix it. And that's what we do.
And you have to do it in an authentic way. I think that's to what you were saying before, the voice, whether it's a piece of content about the arts on the Creators Project. Why that worked for Intel was because we created something that connected with the audience. Now when we're talking about news, you have to be a little more balanced. You know, we have a tendency sometimes to go on our subjective tirades, and maybe that won't work in a kind of mainstream news capacity. But I think the reason why our content has worked was because we weren't that calculated about it when we started. We just literally got the cameras and went, and we were those 2 idiots from Montreal. It was like, how does this camera work? Remember to take the lens cap off. You know, so.
Maybe another.
Yeah, you guys talked about India and China. Can you rank in terms of revenue, where the big country, where the biggest revenue coming from? And also, you mentioned Intel. So, is the preference going to the bigger brands and do it globally, or do you slice and dice different countries, different brand, and yeah?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, we have a big production office in Beijing. We have 100 edit suites there, but it remains to be seen if we'll get the money out, which is always the hard part. I believe India is a bigger market for us because of mobile, because they do have the youngest population in the world, and it's going straight to 4G. But you know, China will be interesting. You know, it's a fascinating place to be right now. We're glad that we're there, and we're shooting a lot of stuff there. Revenue-wise, America is the biggest, and then EMEA is number 2, and then you know, we put India and China together as Asian. And Latin America is actually, we do really well in Brazil and really well in we have our own TV channels, our own TV channel in Mexico. So Latin America is doing very well.
And are you tapping into the global ad budgets and regional ad budgets?
Yeah. So to go to you know, to answer that is, you know, Intel will give us a global budget, and then you know, we can go into Spain, for example, and get different sponsors. Or Noisy is a good example of, we have global sponsors, and then we have different sponsors within each country that we're in. So we have both the big global players and then the smaller sort of you know, in-country players.
And you're not necessarily selling on CPM. You might, when you said you had the ad network, advice, so that's a CPM sell.
Yeah.
But it sounds like the other sells are selling on activations.
Well, Advice is an interesting, which started as an ad network, but then it's a lot of sort of like-minded, really great sites that were smaller, so they couldn't get the sort of bigger buys. We were partnering with WPP so we could get them money. But then the other thing we started doing is giving them content, and obviously video is the way things are going. Video is expensive to make, so we started giving them video. So we were doing a lot of their content, and we were, you know, driving the revenue. So then we found that, you know, we basically own those sites, and so what we could do is, for example, with HBO or with YouTube, we could activate our own stuff or other people's stuff. When I say activate, our conversion rates are 18% across the board on Advice versus 0.08% sort of for the rest of the world or for the rest of online.
And conversion rates in terms of clicking on.
Yeah, going to something or doing something, having an action. And so, you know, we realized the reason why they were so successful is because they're actually watching the content and the activations are sort of seamlessly integrated, which is what we learned in the magazine.
Yeah, exactly.
Scripted like something you'd see on any other network?
So we had it started out because we had a lot of comedians coming to us, and we were going to do like specials, like, you know, 5 camera, 8 camera shoots, and then they said, oh, by the way, I have, you know, this scripted show, and because, you know, there's less and less sort of, you know, there's more and more development and less shows being picked up, that we said, okay, you know, we'll look into it. And we got so many great scripts, and both from sort of unknown, but also from really well-known writers and also talent and stars coming to us saying, I don't even care anymore, I just want to do something fun. Can I do something with you guys and just go, wow? And we said, sure. So we actually have a lot of really exciting scripted projects already in development. But now, because that's so exciting, we're opening this studio, which is going to have, you know, 5 sound stages and blah, blah, blah.
Cool.
It's my honor to have Shane from Vice here. So Shane, you guys started from Montreal years ago, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. What was it like for you guys to start it? How long ago was it?
We started in 1994 in Montreal as a government program, and then we sort of bought the magazine away. It was called Voice of Montreal, and then we changed it to Voice. And then we dropped the O and became Vice. And then around 1998, we moved to New York. And then we started our global expansion. And now we're in 34 countries around the world.
Right. So this morning, you and your partner, what's his name?
Suroosh
Alvi. Yeah. You guys talked about all the new media stuff, the internet, the Vice.com. So do you still consider that those are the keys, the most important, more important than the TV aspect?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think for us, digital is much more important than TV. We do TV in 24 different countries, but for us, the future is online. The future is mobile. So it's what we concentrate on. You know, we're much more enthusiastic about the scale of online, because if you look at what happened in TV, you know, there was, you know, 3 or 4 channels, then cable came along, now there's hundreds of channels fighting each other. But online is where, you know, Gen Y lives. Online is where our audience lives. So, you know, that's where we're going to concentrate all of our efforts.
Mm-hmm. You talked about China and India in particular. You're saying with China, you guys have a big presence there.
Yeah.
But you mentioned also like getting money out. Is it a currency restriction issue, or is it?
It's famously difficult to get money out of China. I mean, you can make money within China, but sort of, you know, getting it out in any meaningful way is difficult. You know, we have a great relationship with Yuko. We have a great relationship with Todu. You know, and there's a great
Yuko Todo is the online platform, viewing platform.
Yeah. So we really have a great relationship with those guys. So we have a lot of scale. We're working with some great brands over there. Mm-hmm. You know, Creators Project has been a big success for us. We have a great creative team making a lot of great content. The problem is if you start making, you know, bigger sums of profit, what do you do with it? It's not such a big problem in the short term, because you can just reinvest the money and build the company. But after a certain point, you know, you want to take the money out, and it's been a problem, not for us, but for pretty much every company that's in China right now.
Right. I've seen some of the Vice news show. It's called Vice.
Right, yeah.
So there's few of the segments are Chinese specific and can be viewed as critical, like the marriage episode and the housing. Did you get pushback from the Chinese government, or what was the?
No, I mean, I think the housing issue has been well documented. There's a lot now. It's, you know, we were a little bit before everybody else, but now it's gaining a lot of international traction. I was just reading something today about worries that the housing bubble in China might lead to a sort of economic slowdown, which is worrying not just for China but for the world. You know, the one-child policy, I think if you look at, you know, it's a stat within China. It's been done, the stories have been done within China. There's 50 million more men than there are women because of the one-child policy. And if you have 50 million, I mean, that's larger than the whole population of Canada.
Yeah.
So if you have, a country size of just men, it's going to lead to problems. And we're not going on and on about the one-child policy. We're going more on about what are the cultural trends because of having 50 million more men than women.
Right. With that show, how do you select the topics you're going to cover, and how much time and effort, well, I guess money you spend on each of the show or the segment?
Well, we take each, we make different criteria for if it's for Vice magazine, or if it's for Vice.com, or if it's for Vice YouTube, or if it's for the Vice TV show, they all have different criteria. But basically, we want it to be a punch in the face, i.e., we want it to be like, wow, the next day if you're at school or the bar or at work, you'll talk about it. Wow, did you see that last night? So it has to be interesting, and if it's interesting and it has a hook.
Speaking about YouTube viewing, and you mentioned some really amazing statistics.
Yeah.
Can you talk about those?
Sure. So we're one of the fastest subscription drivers in the history of YouTube. Longest time on site at over 24 minutes. Best like versus dislike ratio. So a lot more people like it than dislike it, and highest video completion. So people watching video the whole way through. So all of those together are engagement, and the big. It used to be hits, and then it was video views, and then it was unique visitors, and then it was unique visits, and now it's all about engagement. So those are the key metrics, and the fact that we're, in the top 0.1% of YouTube for those metrics, which is the most democratic sort of video platform on earth. You can't jerry rig those numbers. It's very exciting for us because we're on the #1 video platform with the #1 metrics, and we're just going forward.
And for you, would you say the advertisers see those views and whatnot just the same as them seeing a Nielsen rating on TV show and whatnot? Does it make a difference to Intel? And
it's much better than the Nielsen rating. Everybody knows that Nielsen, and other ratings, the systems are flawed. For television, it's a shotgun approach. If you have metrics, you can tell, when they were online, how long they stayed online, where they were, how much money they make, etc., etc. So, online has much better metrics for advertisers. So when advertisers see that, it's worth actually a lot more than a Nielsen rating.
Right. You mentioned India. So India is one, along with China.
Yeah.
Is that one of the big, because of the potential? Would you?
Yeah. Well, India is a very
can you
interesting
talk a bit
country
about that?
because they have very little cable penetration. So, it's a big country, but they have, basically not a lot of television penetration into the population. And the television penetration they do have is basically run by the mothers. And then they have, which is, soap operas and Bollywood. And then they have, on the other side, not that much sort of broadband connectivity, and that's kind of run by the fathers for cricket. So what's happened is 4G has sort of come along, and all the young people basically own mobile, and they get connected through mobile. They don't have access to computers or television. So it's how they access all of their information. So for us, that's great. It's young people, massive population, all wanting, they have great content, but it's mostly Bollywood and cricket. They don't have all the other stuff in between, the food, the travel, the news, the politics, all that stuff for young people. So we said, youngest population, biggest market for young people in the world, all consuming through mobile devices. It's perfect for us. So we went there, and it's going incredibly well.
So you guys are based in New York now, is that right? And
we're based, we have...
You started in Montreal?
Yeah, we're started in Montreal, but headquarters in New York.
Right. You're going to do more projects in Canada?
We'd love to, yeah. Everybody, who's watching, we'd love to do more in Canada. We'd like to do more TV up here. And we're still up here with the magazine. We're still up here online, so check us out.
All right, well, thanks a lot.